Hello everybody and welcome to our channel where we discuss topics that you may want to talk about with your own lawyer. We are not here to give you legal advice, but if you need to talk to a lawyer, maybe some of our videos will help you put your questions into a legal perspective. Today, we are talking about privacy and how it is important for large organizations to ask, how are they managing to protect your personal information? Let's get to it. Now, first of all, we're going to cover the following areas. How do you develop a privacy program in your organization? Number 2, what is the structure of the privacy program? 3, how do you begin with assessment of your privacy program? 4, how do you protect privacy? Number 5, how do you maintain that program? Number 6, do you have a plan for responding to requests and incidents? We might not be able to cover all of these areas here in one video. We will be doing that over a series of videos and we hope you join us. So go ahead and like and subscribe. Stay on this channel. We're gonna go through this one by one. So let's go over some of the basic principles in having a privacy program. Number 1, is it documented? A privacy program is going to be pretty complicated and you'd want to make sure that you have everything written down. That's part of good planning and it's part of maintaining that program. Number 2 is, do you prepare reports and who receives the reports? When you have a privacy program, you want to make sure that you can document everything that you're doing and that you can show it to the proper people what you've done in your privacy program. So do you have those reports and who receives them? And then number 3, can it be audited and tested? You'd like to tell your customers, the regulators, and everybody else that you've got a good program to protect people's privacy. And you want to be able to show that it can stand being tested and that people can pore over it and audit it and say, hey, yeah, you're right, you've got yourself a good working program. Number 4, what forms and tools do you use? Number 5, how do you record the execution to show that it is properly implemented? With that in mind, let's ask ourselves, how are we going to develop a privacy program in our organization? First of all, you want to ask yourself the question, would you be aligning it with the company's vision? Personally, I think you should. Of course, you might have some challenges, especially in some organizations that are new to the concept of privacy. But part of it would be to make sure that your vision of a privacy program goes well hand in hand with the company's vision of how it conducts its business. This will tell you how do you approach the development of the privacy program, what will be the objective of the privacy program, can you get the leaders to support the privacy program. The next question is, they're going to ask you, okay, how are you going to manage it? Is it going to be centralized? Are you going to distribute management, or is it going to be a mix of the two? A centralized management would be more like having one central organization that takes care of the privacy program of the entire large organization. A distributed management would have little domains or little sub-organizations of persons or teams who are in charge of privacy in some separate groups. It's an organizational question that you will have to think about. It could be a mix of the two. You could have distributed teams of different people in different parts of the organization handling privacy, all of them rolling up to one centralized management. But all of this will have to depend on how you approach it in your particular organization. Once you've planned out how you're going to manage it, you're going to ask yourself the question, how are you going to draft the privacy program? First of all, you're going to document it. And when you document it, you're going to write down what would be the scope and its charter. It helps to write these things down because it helps you focus on what you're supposed to do and what you're not going to cover. Now, some people would think that shouldn't we be covering everything? Well, not necessarily. As we will find out later on, when you study other aspects of the privacy program, you're going to find out that, wait a minute, maybe we don't have to cover these items because that's not a part of privacy anyway. Okay. Second, what will be the sources and the types of personal information? That's going to be crucial for you because you'd like to be able to follow and track how your organization collects and processes the personal information. And then third, how do you use the personal information? That goes into the heart of what you do when you are processing the personal information that you have collected. Now, this will bring us to the question of how you're going to align your privacy program with your business organization. As we mentioned earlier, you're going to need to get the buy-in from the leadership. How are you going to do that? Well, you're going to have to align it with the business. You'll have to show that there's a business case for having a privacy program. By which we mean, you'll have to convince the leaders that yes, this will be good for the business. When you develop that, you'll have to identify who will be the stakeholders, who's going to be affected by having a privacy program, who will benefit from it, who's going to have to do more work because of it. Now, that's important because that will tell you who you need to talk to. Are there departments and functions that can help? That's the third one that we're talking about here. Because then they can tell you, well, will the finance team help in managing the funding for this? Will a new and separate privacy team be set up? And then when you identify who these different functions are, it would be good for you to know what would be the procedure for working within the organization. By which I mean, you don't just simply come out and say, I now have a privacy program, then just plop it right up. No. What you want to do is you want to work within the organization and be able to tell the other people, this is how we work, this is how we communicate. And by doing so, you are able to put in the privacy program the way any new program gets into the organization. Okay, and that would also be important when you evaluate whether the culture and data protection objectives are going to be consistent. You might start in an organization where, well, you got your work cut out for you, where the culture on data protection might be very unsophisticated. Maybe they were a new company, maybe they were very small. But in today's environment, that might be slowly changing. Maybe more and more people might be more concerned about their privacy, and hopefully they'll be more concerned about the privacy of their customers, of your customers. So that's going to be important for you to know what's going on in your business and in your enterprise, in your organization. That will help you communicate with the leaders of the different departments. Hey everybody, this is how we're going to start with our privacy program. Now let's move on. Question would be, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to have to talk to the finance team on how you're going to provide funding, whether or not you need a budget for your privacy program. And this will be related to what you're going to do in developing the program. You're going to have to look at what you're going to cover when you develop your strategy for managing the personal information of your customers, and the ones that you collect, the ones that you access, use, you're processing it. How long are you going to retain it, and how will you destroy that information? As you look at all these aspects of what you do in the lifetime of your holding personal information, that will give you a rough idea. Oh, we're going to need a funding, or we're going to need a budget for this. Next, you'll have to ask, do you have procedures to handle inquiries and complaints from customers? What about regulators? And so on. Once in a while, customers, when you're processing a lot of personal information, a lot of customers will probably forget that they've already given you personal information. A lot of customers might even make mistakes in the kind of information that they give you, or simply their information might change over time. After all, if a customer moves and fails to inform you, then you're going to have inaccurate information. How do you respond when customers come in and say, when they communicate to you and say, hey, I'd like to know what kind of information do you have on me, and I'd like to correct that. Might even go so far as to say, okay, I'm done with your company, thank you very much for your business, but now I'd like to remove my information in your records. How do you go about doing that? I want to cancel my account. Do you have procedures to handle those? Next, are you flexible enough to meet the requirements and changes in the law, regulations, and in business? Supposing the law says, well, you have to have certain procedures for handling personal information with respect to people who complain about their personal information. If that rule changes, will you be able to change to comply with these changes? Now, these things you'll have to take into account when you're developing your privacy program. So keep those in mind. Now, let's go to the last part of today's video. Who will be on the privacy team? You've got to think about the organization, the size of the organization, and that will give you a rough idea of how large your team should be. For large organizations, you might even have a chief privacy officer to whom people report, like a privacy manager. You will have privacy analysts and consultants, and then you will have business line privacy leaders, and finally you would even have a team of privacy incident responders. So when you think about the structure there, from the top down, we've just talked about it, but from the bottom up, privacy incident responders and business line privacy leaders, they'll be at the forefront of the line of business, where there are people there who are talking to customers, and in those teams you might have a business line privacy leader who's also giving advice or a partner with all of these teams, so that to make sure that they are also protecting privacy correctly, collecting it properly, and protecting it, and basically complying with your privacy program. They will be reporting to privacy analysts and consultants who might have more experience and will be able to give more advice. And all of these privacy analysts and consultants might report to a privacy manager who would have general coverage of a larger space within your organization. Finally, you will have a chief privacy officer who heads all of the privacy management teams going down, as we mentioned earlier. The privacy incident responders are kind of like a separate team because they are more like the team that kicks in if somebody complains or if somebody raises an alert and says, hey, I think there's an incident on privacy going on here. I think we might have had a breach in privacy. I think somebody might have violated somebody's privacy rights. You will have your privacy incident responders to thank when they come into the picture if somebody's making a complaint about that. What if you have a small organization? You can just have a data protection officer, and the data protection officer will be like the chief privacy officer and privacy manager and privacy incident responder rolled into one. But we'd like to stress, probably in today's world, is that the data protection officer isn't going to be a lone wolf who will take care of everything. It's more like he's going to be the lead in maintaining privacy within your organization, even if small as it is, and everybody will be working together and cooperating with him, but certainly he will be the one most knowledgeable in matters of privacy. And finally, we mentioned the number of roles and functions. The next question would be, who should be the point of contact for privacy issues? Depending on the level. In a small organization, we just talked about the data protection officer. In a large organization, the leadership would probably want to talk to the chief privacy officer. But for smaller issues, at the lower level, when you're in the line of business, you're operating, you're talking to a customer, you have a question about privacy, who could you talk to? Well, you could talk to the privacy business partners or the local leads on privacy. Those are the people who you would want to talk to. Next, based on those roles, what will be their qualification? There would be a difference in qualification between somebody who's going to be a chief privacy officer versus a privacy manager versus a security incident responder. That would depend on the scope of what they're doing and also precisely on what they have to do. So somebody who is into privacy incident response will have a certain skill set, qualifications that would be in tune with the quick action required to do that. Okay? And then somebody who is a privacy lead will probably need to be knowledgeable about your company's procedures and know how to help the business comply with your policies and your programs. So there you have it. We hope you enjoyed this video. But what about you? Do you have other questions that you'd like to ask about privacy and coming up with a privacy program? Let us know in your comments below. And in our next video, we'll move on to talk about continuing with the development of the privacy program and ask ourselves, how are we going to generate awareness of the privacy program throughout the organization? If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Tap the bell notification icon, and we will see you again next time. Thank you very much.